Yo! We are in the middle of GCS3 right now, and I recently played my matches versus GIAA, Goddess and Astronaut, and I thought I would do an analysis of those games, and I'll try to walk you through my thought process in the matches. And talk a little bit about those games. I know that Tightrope recently released a video like this, and I thought it was extremely entertaining, and I do recommend you to go check that one out. And I thought, hell, if that's enjoyable, then maybe you guys enjoy hearing about my opinion of my matches as well. I was supposed to do this for my matches versus Olvadi past week, but unfortunately the replays got scuffed. Fuck! It doesn't work! And it was not possible to actually watch them again, which was a bit unfortunate because I think I had a lot of great insight I could do to some of the decisions I made in those matches. Instead, I will walk you through my games here versus GIAA. So starting off with the series, in this series there was some peculiar rules regarding commanders. Basically, both players got to veto 2 commanders each. And other than that, there was also Commander Terminator active throughout the series, which essentially means you only get to use each commander once. This means, you can't really one-trick your way through it, and if you have like a peculiar commander that you usually go, your opponent can kind of counter you. So it adds some extra depth to the game, which I think is quite fair. I was going with my vetoes first, so I went ahead and vetoed Guard Motor because I think it's just generally overperforming and it's not something you want to be facing. It can be good to have for your own, of course, but I would way rather not be facing this particular commander. My second veto was for Osttier, where I vetoed the Jaeger Infantry because it's simply probably Osttier's strongest doctrine in general. My opponent GIAA went for Soviet Airborne, which is something I play quite regularly. I think it's a really strong doctrine for Soviets. And he also vetoed OKW Elite Armored, which I think might have been a mistake on his part. I don't really used to play a lot of OKW in tournaments, and when I do, I guess I could maybe run this, but it's still, it's a bit of an odd one, and I was actually a bit surprised this was one of his decisions. But yeah. So these 4 commanders are no longer available for any of us. Other than special rules for commanders, there was also special rules for the maps, of course. Since this was a best of 5, we had to somehow end up with 3 maps for the 5 potential games. Game 1 and 2 is played on the same map, 3 and 4, and the ace game, of course. And how this worked was that we each took turn vetoing, maps from a set pool of 5 maps, I think it's in total. And I started off going first, so I vetoed Mill Road because I'm not a huge fan of this map in general. It's not my strong suit, and it's not one I've played that frequently. His choice was to veto Amelie, which was a bit of a surprise. Most people do like this map, but he got rid of it. Maybe he was thinking that I would be strong on it or something. The third veto was mine, and I went with Nexus because I think Nexus is a pretty decent ace game map because of how even it is. There's not really any advantages, playing one side, which makes it a very nice ace game map. And then he ended up vetoing Famaville. With Famaville out of the picture, that means the final map left remaining, which was of course Crossroads, was the one we were going to play in the first 2 games, and then the follow-up games, game 3 and 4, would be on Famaville, with Nexus being the ace game, or ace map. And here we are in the match. Of course, I am quite happy that we ended up playing Crossroads. I definitely think I can play this map extremely well. I've had a lot of games on this very map throughout the years. Of course, this is the recent Moss League version, which is a bit different from the one you may see in Automatch, where for instance, these 2 points have switched sides. And with this game, I was going for the very usual, very common Soviet to combat engineer into conscripts. I think it's a very solid opening, especially on this type of level. And basically what I wanted to do was for somehow make a push through center, because that's where I think Soviets can really prevail. I was actually thinking there at the start of sending my first conscript here, to the north, but I realized, of course, this is not the auto-match version, so you can't really cheese any green cavalry. You have this one, but it is a bit worse than the usual one, because it's just way easier to flank, and I don't think buying time here would generally actually be worthwhile. So what I ended up doing instead was just getting a sandbag up in the south, and basically, you know, wiring as much as possible of the most important parts of the map is something you want to do. You want to make sure you're well enough practiced to make sure that you know which spots to wire to make the most of your combat engineers. If you got 2 of them, you might as well, you know, get the most juice. And, you know, here's the first engagement. I spot the machine gun. Which means it wasn't on the right side, because I was going in thinking he might do some aggressive push on the right from the start, but he really didn't. So with this machine gun spotted, I went back north, and I was just trying, you know, the Aussie matchup is all about basically figuring out where the machine gun is. And if we go over to me here, I did actually spot the machine gun there for a second, and I found the Pioneer here. So here, with knowing, you know, that the machine gun is here somewhere, and, you know, him going upwards, which is what he was doing, I was thinking from my mind, well, what would he do, you know? There's a combat engineer, but there's also conscript engagement going up here. This is, of course, his fuel, and this Pioneer will lose this engagement. So what I figured he would do is he would send the machine gun over to the left side, which means that, you know, the right essentially was open for the taking. And this is something you want to be doing a lot in the early game in order to actually beat Ostyr. It can be very hard if you keep getting like force retreated by the machine gun. So one of the most important parts is simply just keeping tabs on where the machine gun is and where it's going to be. So yeah, I do decide to stay in this engagement for some time, but I do realize, you know, I jump into this house here, no machine gun anywhere to be seen. It's up in the north, right? So I do pull the conscript back. And my plan was basically just to passively reroute this conscript and try to get a 5v2 or v3 Gren engagement, which would be very favorable for me, considering. So here I am just trying to occupy these Grens for as long as possible. This is quite a bad spot for the Grenadiers. I can definitely surround these, and I mean, it's just a general pretty good case of, you know, hammer and anvil. I also make sure to wire this stone wall off. Yeah, this is a very good engagement for me. And I do spot the machine gun. Yes, there it is, I remember. So now I just try to hide behind these 2 sections, basically. Making sure the engagement is taking place without the machine gun interfering.
Soviet HQ now includes a field hospital, but only for those who are sick.
And the machine gun will appear up here in a couple of seconds. There you go. And here I just wanted to get away as fast as possible, but I didn't want to hard retreat, which may have been a mistake. I think I could have done some things quite differently here. I think one option would have been to just try to close in on the machine gun, which I actually didn't consider because I was fearing these Grens way too much. But I think going around like this in some way or another would have actually been possible here, potentially, depending on the models and if I can get the conscript here to actually join a bit more. It's been firing quite a bit, but it's not really been that active compared to these squads, right? So basically, I should have probably used this a bit more. I do end up moving him up in a bit, but I think I could have done this a bit better. Overall, I think it's just a really strong engagement from me, though. You don't usually see Soviets with this opening pushing Ostyr away, especially not with the machine gun around. So I was quite happy with how things ended up looking here. So at this point I was quite happy. I thought I'd occupied most of his army for quite a bit, and I still had some strength in numbers left on the field, even though I retreated 2 squads here. Got the final merge off on the combat engineer. It's going to help him stay on the field for a bit longer. I also sent this conscript or combat engineer up north. I figured I could like maybe keep on a grenadier or something occupied if I managed to take out or decap the fuel, considering I knew all of his units were either here or back in base. So that was my general thinking there. Here I ended up going for the decision of planting a demo. I should have probably cancelled it once I spotted this grenadier, but I realized, like, you know, even though he spots you, it's not a bad demo, because it does just completely nullify this garrison from your opponent. It's it basically puts a password on it if he sees you, right? Because that means he can't get inside while you can still use the garrison against him, which I think is quite a strong advantage to have. But yeah, I did ended up finishing this demo, and they did blow it up a bit later. I think if you see your opponent do this, you should probably just immediately blow it up. Like, there's no point keeping it there. You might just, forget about it and lose a squad. So, I think if I was him, I would just immediately gone and remove this. But he didn't, which meant I actually could use this garrison in quite a few engagements. Whereas, he can't really use this anymore. And also this garrison can be a trouble for the southern player sometimes. So I really, I generally try to do this with this particular garrison because it can be such a pain. Meanwhile, the stone garrison, you can kind of use offensively a lot more, which I think is quite nice. And it's a bit easier to smoke out by simply moving in a flamer like so. And this is when the 2-2 appears around the 6-minute mark, which isn't like super fast, but it's quite a decent timing, I think. I could definitely have had it faster. But I was taking up here. I was feeling confident enough that I could go straight for the T-70, which was my original plan. Generally, at this point, you start thinking about commanders for Soviets, and your options are basically the ones I brought here was guard rifle, mechanized support, and defensive tactics. And all of these have really solid options for your 2CP, right? With the defensive tactics being the strongest. But, guards are in general something you want to be looking for around this area after the T-70. And so this is when I was starting to think about this. Because, I didn't want to do Syscan before T-70 here. I thought that would really limit my time. But one thing here is to notice is that my opponent, GIAA, is going straight for a pack-gun. He's not going for the 4 grenadiers, which you will see later takes me quite a bit by surprise. Generally, what most Austin players do, especially in tournaments, is that they end up doing 4 grenadiers before doing pretty much anything else. Sometimes you see 2-2 before, but it's not too uncommon to actually see 4 grenadiers even before the 2-2. So, with his early engagements being quite bad, I guess this is why he opted for it. But it's also one of those scenarios where, small differences to the order of how you build units can really, affect how you play. And this was one of those scenarios which you're about to see here in a second. So at this point I got my T-70 and I was feeling quite confident here so far in this match. I knew I had just gotten my power spike and basically I just wanted to get value out of this T-70 straight away. And I do find this grenadier here, of course, and generally thinking like this in code too, you sometimes get opportunities, especially as Soviets for some reason, where you can basically trade time to kill a squad. So when I first spotted this, I figured, I'll just get a couple shots off. I expected him to pretty much instantly retreat as soon as he spots the T-70. But what ended up happening is he went for a snare here. And of course I was watching this engagement and I was thinking, I could reverse here, like it's fine. But I went a bit greedy. And in my mind, I was thinking, 4 grens, what's he gonna do? He's gonna snare me, 2-2, can't really kill me. I can easily out-reverse more grenadiers if they were coming to try to kill me with multiple snares or something. So I was feeling quite confident actually eating the snare here because, I know I have the repairs quite close by, right? They're just about to leave the base spawn. So my thinking here was, we'll eat the snare and we'll try to potentially get a wipe on this squad because he needs to get quite close, right? And as long as I stay stationary, I get an amplified damage output because, the accuracy of the vehicle gets better. But not only that, the animation of the snare can sometimes be quite long if you kill the correct models. And I also had these 2 conscripts coming up, right? Which definitely could mean a wipe on the grenadier, and all I saw here was a potential grenadier wipe. And it didn't even cross my mind that a pack was out, and even less so that it would be somewhere as close as in the center, which just completely took me by surprise here. Which is just, it just shows well played from my opponent. He had the pack gun in position. I got my Siscan out, but unfortunately at this point it's too late. All I can really hope for here is that he misses, but that's never, you know, that's not a bet you want to be taking in a tournament. So I was a bit bummed out when I realized this. I kind of chuckled a bit because I realized how outplayed I got in this very scenario. You know, I was thinking just greed, and my opponent already had a plan for that very grenadier, which, you know, it's not everybody does this. It's more common than not that they just go for a snare, just because, you know, they see a snare, right? They maybe he's trying to scare you or something. But I kind of tried to call his bluff here. And instead what ended up being is that he had a straight flush in his hand. So very well played from my opponent. And, you know, this happening, I was like, oh shit, now I'm behind. But I was still feeling fairly confident, even at this moment. But I definitely knew I had to basically pull it together a bit once this happened. So basically now that I'm behind, I'm just, my goal here is to try to play the OG Crossroads way, where you basically hunker down in your quadrant. So we'll have a couple of minutes of pretty much mostly only engagements happening here. My main goal was not to stretch too thin, considering he had a 2-2, which could just save him engagements left and right, as long as he avoids my Siscan. Which means that if I can somehow just play for center and the eastern side, I'll be safe on VPs, and I'll have a decent enough fuel control to actually get a medium out, which is when I can then start turning the match. And there you go. In this match I ended up picking mechanized support tactics. The reason I picked this is like multitude, but I think it's a pretty decent comeback commander, especially versus, like, you know, the standard Ost here. You have this very great ability versus support weapons, the plane. You also have camo for your Siscans, which I'm not sure if I actually ended up ever using in this match. And you of course also have marked vehicle and guards. Just 4 very solid abilities there. So yeah. And at this very point, my opponent ended up going for a sniper. Now, I know I'm a bit infamous for hating snipers, but in tournaments I don't really mind them. I think one very important aspect about tournament is your mentality. And I would like to say I have a pretty decent tournament mentality. And usually versus snipers it's more or less just about playing it cool and playing it in a bit of a boring way. Which I don't like to do when I'm pretty much on stream, because I'll try to, you know, make entertaining games. But in tournaments I don't mind it as much, because it's really not that strong. But it can be a bit annoying, because it forces you to play a bit differently, a bit more, what do you call it, passive potentially? It's not really passive either, it's more like blobby in a way, I think I would call it. And it does, I think, stupefy the gameplay quite a bit. But I also laughed a bit, because I know, you know, Gia obviously has watched my stream once or twice, and he probably knew my hatred for snipers. And, you know, I see this quite a lot when I play in tournaments. A lot of people do build snipers versus me, thinking I will react the same way in tournaments. But, you know, I don't think it's that bad. And, you know, I feel like the decision of basically going sniper might have hurt him more than me. But I ended up being quite lucky killing this later on. So yeah, I'm hanging on for my dear life. Basically just trying to hold the fuel here. Let's go back to my point of view. I still have a probing squad up on the left side every now and then, just to occupy some squads. But I always try to, you know, do safe retreats to make sure you don't get destroyed on retreat path or bleed too much. But you still want to probe it every now and then, just to, you know, force your opponent to keep his squads there, so he doesn't send all of his units down to the south. So here I ended up picking a machine gun on my own. I just really wanted to, you know, try to lock down this position of the map as much as possible. And I wasn't really too scared about the sniper. I think it would have been worse for me if he went for something like a mortar or a second machine gun. I think that would have been a bit worse. But still, I guess the sniper does a pretty decent job versus the guards in the maxim range. especially when I don't have any vehicles. Yeah, here I actually ended up doing a very small mistake. I wanted to merge this, so I kind of, as soon as I retreat this, I just immediately regretted it, because I wanted to keep the guards on the field somehow. But you know, you make small mistakes like that every now and then. So here I think he ended up greeding a bit, but I had a blob here, so I could kill this grenadier. And you know, this is just sniper forcing me kind of to play like this. I also tried to bring my sys gun up close, just for the inevitable machine gun. That way I can just instantly sys barrage it to get it off the field. And pay attention to where the sniper is here, right? He's playing a lot on the right side, and this is not too uncommon, because you know, he's keeping quite a bit of distance from the flanking paths, right? And it's just, he has a very safe path of maneuvering. And this is something you also want to pay attention to, right? As his opponent. But I did realize he spent a lot of time here, which will be important later. So yeah, I managed to hold on to the fuel. I lost it just for a couple seconds, I believe. But again, keeping the sys gun close to force away the machine gun. It's munitions well spent here. Every single time you force the retreat, you know, it's way well worth it. Same for this mine here, for instance, it's also worth it. Basically buying time. And there you go. GIAA finally decided to get rid of the demolition charge in that garrison. So as you can see here, even though I lost my first vehicle, I'm kind of holding on quite well here, which is just, you know, it just shows how strong Soviets in general is, I think. Where I can just, you know, slowly hold on and trade favorably. Even versus a sniper. So here I kind of wanted to shift the focus into the center instead. I went with the Maxim in the garrison. But he gets an amazing rifle nade off here, which did a lot of damage. Like, it's kind of rare that you get that type of damage on a garrison. Which did take me a bit of a surprise. I thought I could sit there for quite some time, but I ended up being forced away pretty much immediately. Which I think was a bit unfortunate. I could definitely have done something with that position. Instead I was kind of pushed back, and now I was, you know, without the guards, without the Maxim, and he was attacking the right side again. So I think possibly a minor mistake to even attempt that. I should have waited a bit longer, just until I have my vehicle, right? I did just tech up, so I was closing in. But I just wanted to buy more time on the fuel, so I could get this vehicle timing pretty decent still. And as you can see now, I have this mine planted here, where the sniper was moving about quite a lot earlier. And I got it down in the earlier push out from the corner. It's one of those things I pretty much just focused. I thought it would be quite important eventually. See, here you have the guards. Just look at the damage they're dealing here. I mean, Pakan is disappearing really fast. And here I thought I could actually destroy this as well. But they ended up for somehow losing vision. I guess the model giving vision died or something, so I couldn't quite finish that one off. So I just instead retreated back into the safety of my machine gun. And here I see the Panzer IV. Of course, you know, I was a bit surprised he was this late with the Panzer IV. It's 18 minutes, and I can see here he actually can afford a second one. So I guess this was just the sniper, as well as the grenadier rebuild, kind of, you know, delaying his Panzer IV. And there you go, sniper goes down to the mine there. Which I was very happy. I heard the mine go off, and I just looked over and I looked if it was one model or two models, and I saw it was one model, so I was quite happy with that. And I got my T-34 out, and basically now I have an advantage all of a sudden, and I was feeling quite confident at this point. Knowing, you know, I was about to get the game back in my advantage. So yeah, I started fortifying the center. I knew right side would be safe as long as I kept the T-34 close. So I was trying to sweep for as many parts of the map as possible. And I also prepared a attack on the far left side. Of course, my opponent playing quite well here. basically realizing he is a bit behind here. He's going to wait for his second Panzer IV. And I do realize this. I think I could have gone a second sys gun faster if I wanted to. But at the end of the day, I think it really paid off that I went for the Maxip and the guards, because it would be really hard to hold the south without those two units. And of course my opponent kind of slipping up and going quite late for his tank. But you know, he has his second Panzer IV in the build, but I already got my second 80 gun now, so now I'm feeling quite happy. You know, I have the guards in a pretty decent position. I'm holding the center. I mean, look at this. This is pretty much impossible to push away. And you know, I have a decent right side. I've got some extra mines put down. Got the guards in a great position here. Putting down as many mines as possible while I can still afford them. And yeah, basically just waiting for my opponent's move. So yeah, I move one sysgun to the left, I got the other one in the center. And he gets a shot off on the T-34, which I think is the opening here for him. I also retreat the guards. So basically what happens is this Panzer IV push happens. I immediately try to move as many of my units here as fast as possible. I do realize what's happening. Unfortunately my 80 gun missed here. Here I do make one quite vital decision. I really didn't want to snare this one, because I consider this vehicle to pretty much be dead anyway. So what I ended up doing was saving this snare until I got this vehicle on the threshold. That way I could potentially kill both of them. So that's kind of my goal here. I know I have a pretty strong infantry army, and I'm pretty much moving everything here, everything I have, to, you know, be able to actually make this a favorable trade for me. Unfortunately, I don't actually get this under the damage threshold, as you'll see here. So it ended up looking quite weird, and I was thinking I might have thrown here, because I don't actually ever get the snare off. And at one point here, it almost looks like both of them will get away, which would have been just a major clusterfuck. But yeah, this Panzer IV ends up going in again. I got the second sys, of course, and I missed this shot, but I do snare this one. And here, this is also something I did realize. He was so busy microing everything else here, and I pretty much just picked all my units and right-clicked these two grenadiers. I mean, they're low and they have quite a far way home, you know, it's quite a bit. And my units can just easily interrupt even the retreat path here. So what I ended up doing was actually killing both of these, and this is when I realized that my opponent in these games didn't have the best micro, if you could call it so. It could have been stress, it could have been, you know, nervousness playing in a tournament, or, you know, literally anything. But this is pretty much one major giveaway for me, that my opponent wasn't, you know, the high APM player that I thought he might have been. So yeah, killing those two squads, pack is open. This is pretty much game here. I mean, I've lost nothing except for the T-34 so far. I am basically going to kill this Panzer IV as well, so he lost like what, half his army for a T-34 kill, you know. It's just, this is just such a strong engagement for me, and you know, I think it could have been even better. I think this Panzer IV could have been killed as well, but of course it could have been different as well, you know. If he retreats this, it can be really hard for me to get back. Considering, you know, he's gonna have 2, possibly 3 Panzer IVs versus my T-34. But I was just, at this point I knew it was over, and he pretty much tabs out any second here. And yeah, there you go, GG. So overall, I think this was a pretty good starting game. I mean, I tried to go into this seriously, even though I was very confident I would end up winning this series. I mean, it is a best of 5, so I will have a lot of opportunity, you know, to kind of play really well. But you know, losing that T-70 and still somehow sneaking back into the game. I mean, look at this this game right now, right? I lost my T-70, I lost my first T-34. I've yet to kill a single vehicle, and I still end up winning the match. That's kind of kind of showing you the strength of Soviets, right? I mean, I'm the only guy losing shit, and still I'm winning the match. So yeah, it's. I think I basically applied to my strengths here quite a lot. Very unfortunate, I think, losing this T70. I think it would have been way more one-sided if I didn't lose this that early. But it just took me by such a big surprise. And I really didn't think there would be a pack gun lining up in the center at the 7 to 8 minute mark. But yeah, good game. Here we are in game 2, of course. I am 1-0 up at this point. And after a game, you always switch sides. So I am, of course, playing as the Axis here, picking Ost here. On the north of the same map. That's how it works. So game 1, game 2 is played on Crossroads. Game 3, game 4 is still played on Famaville. So yeah, I'm bringing some commanders here. Of course, Jaeger Infantry was vetoed. But, you know, Austria still has a lot of very strong doctrines. And basically I'm going for 2 quite heavy late game doctrines. Where I think Blitzkrieg, I'd argue, is a bit more mid game. And also MOBA defense, which is basically more of a comeback doctrine. I do like keeping something like that, similar as Soviets, where I bring a defensive doctrine, just in case you're getting truly destroyed in the early game. But my capping order here is basically just getting control of the center, which is very important on Crossroads. I get a sandbag down, I do end up wiring this garrison, as well as all of this green cover, which is a lot of work for your Pioneer, but it does also mean that the center is like way more favorable for you, because you have a lot more green cover, right? Meanwhile, your opponent basically only has that garrison, which is not as good as you might, you know, as the green cover essentially. But yeah, I do go on the offensive here. I expect him to do the same actually, but I figured, you know, I can probably push him off no matter how many units he has here, as soon as I get my Grens out. Meanwhile, my MG can deal with the south, and if I end up winning in the north, and my MG of course wins in the south, that means he has to take something back, and if the MG is on his fuel, it's going to be really hard for him actually to deal with that. So that was my general plan here. We do have disengagement, which I think is okay-ish for me. I got 1 model before he reached the green cover, so I should eventually win this. But he of course has this second conscript coming. So what I ended up doing was just trying to buy as much time here as possible before my other forces appear. So Pioneer is going to try to get the cutoff, while the next Gren is going to arrive here as well. And meanwhile in the south here, I do find 1 conscript, but I am quite happy here, since I have the machine gun. Meanwhile here, his flamethrower actually pops as I close in on him, which is a bit unfortunate, but also, you know, it has to pop sometime, right? So, all the well played from him. And here I do get flanked by these combat engineers. What I do end up doing is sending my grenadier to deal with the combat engineer, while my MG sets up to cover versus the conscript, right? But he ended up pulling back with the conscript, while his combat engineer went back into the machine gun arc, which, you know, isn't the best. But yeah, I was quite happy with that, only losing 1 model there. Meanwhile, I am struggling a bit more in the north here. That flamethrower is of course quite hard to deal with. But I'm basically just sending them back out all the time. Since I do have the south under control, I just need to focus on this northern area right now. So yeah, I do find him retreating here. I'm quite happy with that, because that means there shouldn't be any squads remaining here. And I of course don't cap this, I go straight for the cutoff, getting these resource income for him decapped as soon as possible. Also getting of course the fresh grenadier back out and back capping. So suddenly I'm in a very favorable position here, I would say. I have my machine gun and Gren holding his fuel in the southeast, while I have the rest of my army basically capping the north. So here I just tried to reposition my MG, but he got a pretty decent flank off here anyway, so I'm about to get forced away. Of course I knew something like this would happen, that's why I moved it from the VP. But I think in hindsight I probably should have just focused 1 area, so I could have put my MG here and put it like this maybe, just for that flanking squad. Because I know it's coming, right? I was thinking like, how is he gonna deal with the machine gun? Well, he has to basically flank So a bit of a misplay there. I definitely could have held this versus those two squads if I simply had planned a bit better. But yeah, tier 2 coming up for me now. I'm also going to get healing, of course. So yeah, I'm going straight into 2-2 here, and then I'll end up getting my 4th Grenadier. I'm still not sure what he's going to pick here. I do expect a T-70. I am aware though, I'm about to lose the north, so I do send my machine gun back in that direction. Other than that, I'm also getting, of course, LMGs here as soon as I can afford them. They are quite a nice power spike for us here. So yeah, now with the 2-2, I know I have a small window in case of if he goes T-70. So I end up trying to make a push here for the cutoff with basically half my army or somewhere along those lines. Which, you know, I saw a couple squads retreating in the north and of course the squad in the center. So I know I bought myself some time here to actually be able to do this. And I definitely think you as a player should try to capitalize when your opponent is off the field. And you know, the cutoffs, they are quite fast to decapture. Yeah, removing the sandbag while, with the 2-2. Don't want it idle. Also getting my machine gun here, gonna try to set up so I can hold the cutoff with it. But of course, as we know, the M5 is coming. There you go, M5 is here. I went for 4 Grenadiers, so I don't have the pack out yet. I should queue it up any second by now when I spot this though. But I also know I'm going to get forced away here. I'm going to retreat quite soon, because I know the quad is coming, right? And the quad can be very dangerous on retreat paths. But yeah, I'm not too upset about anything here. He went for quad, which I'm actually quite happy with. I think T7 is a bit of a more dangerous threat, but I do recognize that the M5 can be very strong as well. But I know, you know, 2-2 can deal with it if you can connect a pack or if you can snare it. So it's a very even matchup in that regard. Also bringing my pack to the south, I intend to attack again. I think I can easily just send my 2-2 up north if I need to deal with anything up there. Which you'll see I'll have to, since there's a conscript there. Yeah, I'm quite stubborn here, still attacking south. I did actually not spot that, but that was an obvious like mine formation, right? But I did actually not see that. Yeah, he got a pretty good burst here on my 2-2. And here I was actually fearing an 80 gun of his, because I've not actually seen the guards yet. Then I just end up empowering the north here, got the 2-2 rerouting to get repairs. Here I'm basically just forcing him away, trying to capture as much as possible. Basically just trading some manpower here to get that point. Then I spot the guard, so I know I should have some leeway before the Syscan hits. So here I end up getting a second machine gun, which I think is a very good choice here for me. The other option would be like a Pioneer or another pack, but I feel like those options would be a bit odd in this position. So I end up grabbing that machine gun instead. And here, of course, the advantage of 2-2 over M5 is I can actually attack ground through this hedgerow, right? The M5 does not get the luxury to actually be able to attack ground. And yeah, I'm holding on quite well here. I did expect mines, so I ended up sending the Freeman squad, but I didn't know exactly where they would be. Yeah, a bit odd here. I remember telling my machine gun to fire at the flamethrower, but they seem to not ever get the suppression off. And oh yeah, M5 goes down. Basically what happened is my pack gun connected with the M5 and my 2-2 came in for the kill there. Sorry for missing that, but that's all that happened. And then when I looked back to this engagement, I was surprised the flamethrower reached the garrison. I'm not quite sure how that happened, that's why I focused it on it here. But yeah, this squad or this engagement I was quite happy with. I thought I could maybe even wipe the guards here if I stayed a bit longer. Like here, I shouldn't be retreating here, I should have stayed a bit longer and then I could maybe have finished this squad. Of course it's a gamble, which is why I ended up not doing it, but in hindsight here, looking at the replay, I definitely think I could have killed this. But Yeah, I end up getting snared for my troubles, but I'm kind of fine with that. So yeah, happy how the game's turned out so far. He's down to 350 VPs essentially. And I've got a pretty solid army here, also getting of course Battle Phase 2 here. I didn't want to like wait for anything else. I thought I could just go straight up, getting like a... I was actually considering a Command Panzer IV here for quite some time. I think it's really strong on this map because of how late game heavy Crossroads can be. But I ended up going with the decision of Festing Armor actually, because of the P4J. Yeah, I'm trying to be as active as possible with my 2-2. I was actually a bit surprised now that I look here, because there's no Syscam, but it is in the queue right now, so it was probably floating for a bit there. Could definitely have been out earlier. And yeah, I saw the squad here, I just expected there to be a mine, again on the same location, but that ended up not being the case. And I once again go for a cutoff push here with the machine gun, of course. Trying a rifle nade here, a bit sneaky, but of course my opponent dodges that quite nicely. At this point you can see that I have LMGs on all my squads, and I'm getting a lot of munitions, right? So what I end up doing is I end up using a lot of rifle nades, and I also plant a lot of mines, which you will see kicking in quite soon. Meanwhile, my opponent here, I think this is a grave mistake. He goes for a sniper again, just like he did in game 1. But he's in an entirely different position here, and you know, getting sniper versus Ost here, right, is really not that good. You might be thinking, well, they're 4-man squads, right? They're 4-man squads, so it deals more damage versus Ost here than Soviets. But that's not the entire like picture. Because what he had to do to get this sniper as Soviets is he had to backtech, which just makes it like 160 manpower more expensive, right? Meanwhile, Ost here, you always, or in most scenarios, you have tier 2, right? So you can always get that sniper, so it's actually a bit cheaper for Ost here than it is for Soviets to get that sniper out. So I think this is a great mistake, because that's just a lot of manpower, and if he didn't get this, he could definitely, like, you know, match my vehicle, which I'll be getting soon, with a vehicle of his own. But this sniper alone just pulls him quite a bit back, or it puts him so far behind, right, in terms of manpower. So yeah, I think this was a mistake from him. At this point, I'm quite happy. I got my double MG set up, my 4 guns and 2-2. They're all just showing how well they're controlling the map, you know. Getting the M5 kill also, of course, helps a lot with the map control here. And this is something he never really managed to pull off when I was allies, which I think is mostly due to the machine guns, right? If you keep one on each side, it becomes just too hard for the Syscam to remove them. And of course the sniper was revealed there, so I know it's here, but I'm kind of unfazed by it at this point. And I'm just trying to, you know, make it as costly as possible for him to be attacking me here. Yeah, look at my munitions income here. I'm getting 50 munitions a minute, which is a shit ton. Which alone almost made me pick this because of the planes and tactical movement, right? But I did end up going festing with the plan of just spamming mines, which is why you will see me queue up a second Pioneer in a bit as well. I was actually thinking of a second Pioneer already, but I really wanted to hit a very good vehicle timing first, so I intended to float this manpower until I got the vehicle, and then I could get the Pioneer. And yeah, here he overextended a bit, so I managed to force him away, buying some more time. Basically limiting the damage output of the sniper, right? And there you go, you see the festing armor pick up. And the difference here, of course, is I could get a P4 now, but I'm instead going to be waiting for the P4J variant, which is the OKW version. And it's basically just a stronger Panzer IV, better gun, better armor. And at this point I'm actually not too sure what doctrine he picked. I know he brought airborne, and I actually told him before this match, or while loading in, that he brought a band commander. But he has said he won't pick it, and you know, that's that. But I know he has guards, that's pretty much all I know. Yeah, I mean, it's very hard for him here to actually get any terms of, or any kind of map control. He does end up using the planes here, which I actually didn't notice until it's already struck me, and fortunately it didn't die. Like sometimes this can end up wiping your stuff. There you go, P4J is in queue.
We are losing a sector.
It's really hard here for GIAA really, because you know his sniper can't be everywhere. And at this point my units are becoming extremely efficient on their own, right? Got a bit lucky there, didn't get hit, but would have survived anyway. So yeah, I mean, looking at his resources here, he grabbed a second sysgun, which is fine, but if he didn't grab that sniper, he would have actually been able to build something like a KV-1 pretty soon here, like within a minute or so. So I think really the sniper, it's just not paid off. It has 7 kills, but it like doesn't matter because I'm doing so well in the manpower trades anyway. You can see me there spamming some more rifle nades, planting S-mines everywhere. Here I end up going for a dive, and this is basically just going for something where I'm trying to be a bit more value efficient with my proper timing here, getting as much damage as possible. Of course it also has the potential of actually killing this if I get a couple good hits, which didn't happen, but the potential is there, right? So yeah, I return to repairing before I'm trying something similar. Just trying to keep an eye out where he's keeping his sysguns. You know, if there's any openings for a dive here where I can take them out. And I mean, my P4 here is just free reign. Of course, having to go around there, I mean, this wire just paying off throughout the entire game. Same for this wire, right? And here he does end up stepping in some S-mines. Losing a couple models there. I'm not sure if this... I think this combat engineer might actually go down. But yeah, here I see the sysguns, right? With the 2-2. So what I end up doing here is just going straight in, because there is this huge chunky ass building between these, which means that you're gonna struggle, right? Firing across this. And I also have some grenadiers coming up behind in a really strong position. And I have a huge ass army coming out of base at this very moment. So my plan here was just get my vehicles on top of these 80 guns eventually, and then my army can come in and just sweep up whatever is left. So that was my intended plan here. I basically just saw this, you know, it's just such a weak position, because the 80 guns are really gonna struggle here getting shots off on approach, right? And the combat engineer of course goes down to the S-mines there. Yeah, he managed just to get one shot off, which was quite well played from him. He realized it's coming in that direction, I'm assuming. And then I'm not sure what he was doing here. Because the guards end up getting killed in the garrison, which is just, you know, that... It shouldn't happen. Like, that's so bad. But yeah, I never really got so far as to reach the 80 guns. Instead he calls it right here. And you know, I truly believe it's pretty much over here. He just got tier 4, so he could get a vehicle, but I mean, look at my army at this point, right? It's quite insane. And of course he's going to get pushed off here in a minute as well. But yeah, I'm not quite sure, like once again, it's similar to game 1 where he kinda just... I don't know, struggling with the micro, right, with the grenadiers in the north, and I pretty much just straight up capitalize on it. So yeah, that was game 2, solid game once again, I think. This one was way more one-sided. I never really felt like I was struggling this match compared to game 1, where I ended up, you know, losing the T70, and of course that big push happening on the left. But yeah, quite happy with this match, and I'm looking forward to Fayemonville. So here we are, of course, on Fayemonville approach, game 3. I ended up picking USF for this match, actually. My general thought process here was that Fayemonville is just such an amazing map that you can really play any faction, and USF is one of those factions that actually benefit quite a lot from this map because of the amount of flanking routes you really have, making just all your units become so much stronger. Of course, also with the self-repair and all of these skirmish points, basically, where you can just, you know, repair and cap at the same time. Like, you can just be really, really efficient on this map. But yeah, I end up going for one of my favorite Feymanville North openers, which is basically attack your opponent's fuel. It's a bit harder for some reason, I feel like, to do as Axis for South. I mean, it's the exact same setup where you have garrison in green and the point, but it just feels so much easier to do it for North, where you basically just, you know, you wire some stuff, and then you send your first combat squads to this green or to the garrison, depending on. And if, you know, most usually they try to like set up a machine gun here, but you have a lot of flanking routes here where you can actually, you know, go around him. And even if you don't, you still have green cover and a garrison to fall back to. Like, you have just so many possibilities versus this point. If you look at some of the better players, such as, you know, Loveness, Nisler or Orange Pest or whatever, what they do as Axis here is they just send the Pioneer and instantly build a sandbag, because you know, they're gonna fucking need it. Another option is to possibly go and wire this, which is what I usually prefer. I wire this before, but you can do it either way. It really depends which direction your opponent is coming from. But yeah, this, I don't know why, but this feels a bit weaker than this one does, or maybe it's just, you know, the allied power level. But yeah, usually the first couple of engagements end up going here. However, my opponent, we'll take a look at what he is doing, actually went for South this match, which I was surprised by. I've tried this a couple times as well. It never really ever works out. I don't know why, but Axis is just weaker in the South on this map. I mean, I've tried this capping order so many times, but I don't know, it's just Feymanville. Axis has to play defensive the first couple of minutes. That's just the way it is, I think. We get a very strange split here at the start. Which, by the way, I also want to mention, I think it favors me even more, the fact that he went South, because this cutoff is just way easier to attack than this cutoff. Because you have this blocker here, right, and you have this basically green cover, so you can just sneak over, get a couple of shots off here, and then you can go around and grab the cutoff, right? So yeah, I was actually quite happy here that he just ended up giving me the North. Of course, expecting the Grenadier to be here, so I just sent my Rifleman down. Expecting to see that Grenadier, but he was already moving away. So here, of course, since I knew he wasn't in the North, right, I expected a machine gun to be down South. So what I tried was, I tried to actually get behind the machine gun, even though I haven't even spotted it yet, but I just expected it to like sit here or something. But I ended up finding his Pioneer. And, you know, I was actually quite happy with that, because, you know, the Pioneers will just get chewed up by the M1 Garrons here, as you can see. Which just means one less squad. And here I knew, of course, he knows my Rifleman is here, so I'm gonna try to, you know, go back the way I came from. But he set up in a bit of a better position here. But I ended up, I think, just spotting as he sets up. Yeah, I spotted him just when he sets up, so just very lucky there for me to walk in once he's setting up. Because that means I'm gonna get a lot of free damage here on the machine gun, as you can see in a second. Like, this is just free damage because of my timing there, which was just very lucky. But yeah, I'll retreat, and then I'll just try to use this green cover in a minute. Meanwhile, I'm sending my other squads around. So my game plan for this match was early M20. I know I was a bit slow on this one. I could have been a bit faster, I think, saving me maybe 10-15 seconds faster M20. Of course, it didn't end up mattering in this game, but usually that's what you want to do. For fast M20, you go rifle, then you wait, and then you take lieutenant, and then you end up going rifle after lieutenant while it's still in the queue. You're gonna get both of these two squads at the same time, and as soon as the lieutenant is out, you should start grabbing the mechanized platoon command post, and then you'll be able to get the M20 as soon as this is finished, which is like perfect timing, perfect fuel control, perfect everything. And the difference is, of course, you start queuing up lieutenant before getting the third rifle. If you get your third rifle first, the lieutenant is just going to be so slow to get that, you know, M20 can be delayed by like 40-50 seconds, which does matter versus austere because of the 2-2, right? But yeah, I'm quite happy here. I know I can nullify this cover by using this area. And of course I know the machine gun is down here. I'm gonna be forced retreated here, but I'm going for the cutoff with the RE, just to, you know, try to surround him as much as possible here. But yeah, this stone wall just helps North allies so much on this Master League version. You also saw me switching places there. I want this squad to have the good engagement. And as you can see, I mean, I'm basically just killing like 4 squads here with this free squad. It's quite insane how efficient this engagement here is for me. And of course my reinforcements will come any minute, and I'll just hold until then. Basically just buying time to try to get around here. Now this cutoff wasn't as good. I realized this while I was actually capping, because he's actually still connected through the VP. So I ended up sending my RE back, of course, to try to stop and basically fully cut him off here. But yeah, I got the rifles now, and this is just amazing for USF here. It's like free real estate. I can just munch up his squads, and I even, you know, a bit sloppy retreat here. I think he was just too pressured at this point. You know, the nerves just got to him, and he was probably a bit upset after game 1 and game 2 as well. And you know, in tournaments it's all about that mentality. You're facing the same opponent over and over and over again, and if you're losing those matches, it can really start to getting into your psyche. And that's why I think it's very important that you just completely reset between matches, and that's something I think GIAA struggled a bit with. So yeah, he ended up losing a squad there, and that was enough to pretty much just break him, and he calls it here. I don't think the game is over at this point, but I don't know, he kind of broke at this point and didn't want to continue. But yeah, overall good series, I think. Well played to GIAA, of course. Quite happy with my performance. I think I slipped up a couple times. I mean, I brought up the losing the T70, but I don't think that was me misplaying. It was more me getting outplayed by my opponent. Because once again, it's just I see the white potential in that little window there, eh? And he ended up punishing me for my greed. But yeah, other than that, very few complaints, and I'm looking forward to facing off Orange Pest this weekend. So make sure you tune in to, I think, twitch.tv/AECO for the semifinals there, which is of course going to be played on location in Denmark, which is going to be a lot of fun, just meeting all the players. But yeah, thank you for watching this analysis.